Welcome to the second part of our demonstration of the people viewer within the Spatial Historian. For this demo, I'm using the SSDA Cuba project, and I'm looking at the baptism register from 1590 to 1600. And I've already selected a person in the people viewer, which we have here, Rodrigo Bernaldo. Selected him because he's fairly representative of the entries we have here and gives pretty good examples of the types of things that we can track related to a person. So when I select him, on the right side of the screen here we have the details about the individual. So this top section here are basically the standard demographic characteristics of a person. And these are entered based on whatever the standards are for your given project. We also can enter tags, if those are at all appropriate, and any specific or special titles that the person may have. Now, one of the things down the bottom of the screen, here we see another set of tabs. And this listing here is the relationships this person has. And we can see here in this case of Rodrigo, he has a parent, father, mother, and two godparents. And these were people who are recorded in the baptism entry for Rodrigo. Now, one of the things about this listing down here is you can right click and you can navigate to those individual people. So for instance, if I right click on a godparent, I can go to that person and the system navigates, and now I'm looking at the details for that person. So you can move back and forth through this relationship tab pretty easily. So I'm going to hit my back arrow and go back to Rodrigo. And again, these details, the relationships are down here, and a couple things we can do. We can edit these details, we can add new ones if we like, and remove relationships. So in this case, I'm just going to show you how to edit one. If you double click or right click and pick the edit option, you can just specify the person, all the characteristics of this relationship. And what you'll see here, one of the useful things is it reads out a description of what the relationship actually is, just to make sure that we've got it all set up in the correct order. If I go through and add a relationship, I'll show you how that process works. The way you do this is you pick add relationship, and then the primary person, in this case, is Rodrigo. But if I want to add a related person, I can simply pick another person, drag and drop on here, and it sets up that relationship. Now, to specify the relationship type, you drop down this list and pick whatever it is. So in this case, I might say that he is the stepchild of someone. So when I pick stepchild, you notice that it automatically sets the reciprocal relationship to a step parent. This concept of reciprocal relationships allows this to happen automatically, and also eases and speeds the use of the content helper, which we've talked about before. Again, it reads out here in text what that relationship is, just to make sure you have it set up in the right order. You can enter the bounding box for the start dates and the end dates. In the case of a stepchild, you may not know when the relationship is going to end, but you have a pretty good idea based on a baptism record of the exact start and end dates. So in this case, you would set the start and end dates, or the early and late start dates for the same date. The earliest end date would be the date of the baptism in this case. But whatever the specifications are here, based on what your project standards are, you can just enter. I'm going to cancel out of here though, and not save that one. One thing I did want to show you then as well is if I go to this godparent, this is kind of an interesting one. You'll see that this godparent is a slave holder of 8 different people. So we've been able to pretty quickly identify a slave holder and get some idea of how many slaves that person owns. As we go through more records in this baptism register, this number may grow as well. Now, the next tab we'll look at is this events tab. If I click on that, you can see the events for Rodrigo, and in this case he has one event, which is his baptism. This can be a large number if we have people who are baptized, married, they may move, whatever the specific events are that are of importance. Down at the bottom of the screen, when you select a particular event, you see all the people who attended that event. And here we have their names and what their role was in that event. So this is the official who presided. And again, the godparents and parents were listed in that event as well. And similarly, I can right click and go to that person and navigate there. One of the things I can also do is simply double click on the event and I can get the details about it. I can see where it was referenced, the location of the event, and other information about the type of event and the dates and so forth. Now another thing, what I will do here is show you this other tab, the attended events. This is for events that are not specific to a person, but there are events that that person may have attended. And let me go back to Rodrigo's parent, and if I go to his event tab, you see that he has no events of his own, but he did attend the baptism of his son. So there's a difference between events for a person and events that a person attended. So back to Rodrigo again. The next tab up top here is the references. So this is a list of all the places that this person was referenced. And in this case, it was referenced in folio 7R of this baptism register. In the case of multiple events for a person, you'll also probably have multiple references as well. Now, down at the bottom of the screen, there's this thing called snapshots, and snapshots are point-in-time information about a person. So in this particular reference, if I look at the details, you'll see what the characteristics of that person were at a particular time and recorded in a particular document, because these can change over time. Ethnicity and color won't change, but the interpretation of those and how they're referenced in the documents may change. So these are mutable characteristics for a person at a point in time, and that's the snapshots down here. What I'm going to do is go back to Rodrigo and to his events and go to the official presiding over that event, and I'm going to just go to the person. And what I'll see here, this is an example of a person with a lot of references. So he's an official of the church who's presided over a lot of baptisms and presumably other functions as well. And you see there's quite a few different entries for him, pretty much entries for every single folio for a certain period of time. So that is in general sense the information that's recorded for a person. Let me go back now to Rodrigo and to his references, and one of the other things about references is you can right click and you can go to the document, and what you'll see in the background here is it's finding that document. I'll close the people viewer for a minute, and you can see right in the text it highlights the actual reference within this particular folio. So it scans the information, goes to that text and scans and highlights the person for you for a quick reference. Now opening up the people viewer again, we are back to his basic information. Now one of the other things you can do is if you right click on the person, you can also map this individual's information. In this case we're mapping the events for this person, and what we see here is a single point in time event floating basically over Havana right here. So you can navigate quickly back and forth between events and the mapping location of where they're at, and on also the documents where they're referenced. So that's a very quick summary of the details on the right side of the screen. Now what I'm going to do is switch to another project and show you this duplicate search technique that we have in place as well. Okay, so what I've done here is I've switched over to a different project to show you a demonstration of some of the searching for duplicates, some of the technique that's built into the system to identify potential duplicate people. And I switched to this because this project has a much deeper hierarchy of people, family trees, defined for it. So what I'm going to do is find a representative person here, and what I've done is a Regis family who has quite a few members in it, and as you can see in the tree view here, a pretty good depth of hierarchy. Now, one of the things that you'll also see is if I pick one of the people here, so for instance Jacques Regis, you'll see quite a few of them in here, and let me retype that again. Okay, one of the good examples of this is Jacques Regis that I've highlighted right here. You'll notice that there are quite a few names when I was doing my search that were highlighted, and if I click on the possible duplicates tab, you'll see where it identifies potential duplicate people based on the names, and also then based on potential synonyms and the father's name. Now if I right click and highlight all the duplicates, you can see it highlights them on the left side here. And one of the things you'll notice is this first Jacques does not have a C in the name, so that's a potential duplicate based on a synonym. You'll also notice that this Jacques has a parent named Vincent, so we see in this case the last name or the surname is the same. There's a synonym for the first name that matches, and the father's names are the same. We also have a proximity match. In this case we don't have locations, but if we had locations for events for these people, it identifies the closest proximity in meters or kilometers, depending, that these people have been in contact. So that's the duplicate process, and we don't actually store duplicates. What we do is we store, or we calculate on the fly, potential duplicates and then display those for you to examine.